Okay, hi class. My name is KP, or my name is Chimerius Powers. I go by KP. This is my presentation on the Cantu cloth. Okay, so the Cantu cloth is by African culture. It was inspired when these two guys seen a spider. Now the spider, as y'all know, most spiders always have patterns on them or some type of unique design about them. And they took that and decided to brand that into clothing. As you see here, the Asante cloth, or Asante Cantu cloth, the 20th century, it's made with silk and cotton. And it's also in the Vatican Museum. Now, for my formal visual analysis, overall, as you can see in this picture here shows more clarity. It shows more diversity. Overall, I feel like it's more diverse because it has more colors than the first one did. Then I showed you all the first one, and we can go back. The first one is a mixture between green, a very light green, which is rare in their type of, which isn't rare in their type of culture. Then you have black, orange, and a shade, a very dark maroon shade of red, which looks black, but it isn't. Unlike the second one, it has more bright colors, including deep colors like emerald green and brilliant blues. I feel like the line clarity is amazing and it's really detailed line work. The person in the picture is Asante Hine Osei Tutu, and he's basically a very, very popular king over here. It's his royal status that allows him to wear Cantus the way that he does. Because Cantus are naturally made for more people of royal blood or royalty for them to wear. So for a continuation, the texture of the cloth, it looks really soft. The fabric used is silk and cotton. So the Cantu cloth is more like our modern day clothing because it's made of silk and cotton, which is what our materials of clothing are made out of. By my shirt, my pants, and the undershirt that I'm wearing, the shirts that you guys are wearing, the clothing. The perspective and composition, the Cantu is inspired by spiders, as said earlier, so the designs are pattern-like and has a pattern that's easily recognized or easily distinguished. Composition is symmetrically balanced with the design, with lighter colors being horizontal and the darker colors being vertical. With the way that this can be seen is you can barely see it from here, but you have light brilliant blues, but you have them at horizontal angles, and he has more of the dark colors, more vertically, which is a pattern that you don't really see often, but reminds you a lot of the very first one that I showed you. Now, the context, the content, and the subject matter. What is this about? What's the story or historical context behind the Cantu cloth? The guy in the picture is King Asante Hine Osei Tutu II. Now, he's a royal blood, as I mentioned earlier, and the cloth was made for people of royalty. The Cantu is exported as one of the key symbols of African heritage and pride in African ancestry throughout diaspora. And that's most of the history behind the Cantu cloth. It was really just regular clothing that they just made for royal people to wear. Simply, the fastest way I can put it, or the simplest way I can put it. Other examples of the Cantu cloth, as you see, we have the Cantu print bag, which was made in the 1990s. You have the king has boarded the ship, and Asante Kente cloth. It was made in 1985. Really good. I feel like this design should be used more, but it really isn't. But in their culture, these designs are pretty much everywhere. Then you had the Iwe Kante cloth, which was made between the 1920s and the 1940s. And then you have the first one that I showed y'all that was in the beginning. The stylistic period, I did a lot of research on this. I couldn't really narrow it down history-wise to a certain point to where I can say definitely was made, but the stylistic period is the 12th century, Africans, medieval golden age, considered the Middle Ages, made before the 1400s or 1480s. Historically, the fabric was worn in like a toga-like fashion by royalty among the Iwe and the Akan, which is basically their tribe names, where they're from in Africa. The historical, cultural, social context of the artistic style, so its time period. So I'm gonna just brief past this because I know y'all don't want to read all of this. So during the Middle Ages, Africa was really a continent in darkness and its shining period in which great African cultures flourished. And basically what that means is Africa was really in a dark age, and this, in their terms of their Middle Ages, we don't have really much history on them because not a lot of people was out there. So I had to do some extensive research, and there's not really a lot of African history that we know about from their Middle Ages or anything from like really a dark time, because most of the history that we do have was slavery, and I didn't want to sit up here and talk about that for the entire slide. But the view of Africa's distant past as a dark age, without history deeply connected with the legacy of slavery, like I was saying, African rulers developed different forms of government and culture influenced by traditional religions, Christianity, and the spread of Islam to West Africa. Many African cultures emphasize the importance of ancestors and intermediates between the living and the gods and the supreme creator. And art is seen as a way to connect or contact the spirits of the ancestrals. My conclusion is the Kante cloth is extremely important to African culture. The Middle Ages has a lot of unknown factors of African culture due to slavery, as stated earlier. It's very important of their religion and uniqueness of Africans for being as innovative with the way that they decided to dress and make clothing. These are the works cited. I also have other works cited that are in the text. You just have to go over it. And there's a little note over here that's at the bottom that basically reads, I didn't want to talk about slavery the whole slide, so I kind of just moved it along. But that is my presentation, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad that y'all stuck around to hear me give my presentation out.